Welcome to Lindamood-Bell Radio. I'm Dave Hungerford for Lindamood-Bell. Are you concerned about your child's literacy skills or academic performance? Lindamood-Bell instruction in reading, comprehension, and math helps students of all ages catch up or get ahead. In just weeks, students make extraordinary progress, making them more confident and prepared for school. Our evidence-based instruction is available both online and in person. Learn more and get started today at lindamoodbell.com or call us at 800-233-1819. In today's episode, I had a chat with Dr. Ruth Gentry, a clinical psychologist, and we talked about her son's experience with online Lindamood-Bell instruction. Here it is.
My name is Dr. Ruth Gentry. I am a clinical psychologist. My expertise is working with adults with chronic health issues like chronic pain, insomnia, health psychology, but mainly adults. So I'm not a child psychologist, but I do work obviously with mental health and private practice.
You're the mother as well of Roan. And tell me a little bit about Roan. What kind of kid is he?
Rowan is a very obviously energetic 7-year-old. He really loves athletics and sports. That's one thing that I think has definitely kept his self-esteem up through all this, especially before tutoring, is he excels in sports. Like, he's 7 and he's already skiing blue hard runs. He plays baseball. He's good at that. He plays football. He's done climbing. I mean, that comes easy to him. Like the athletics, it's something he enjoys, and you could see him bright up when he plays football and sports. And he has a dog named Sammy that does have special needs too. He's in a wheelchair and he loves Sammy to death. And Sammy's is his emotional support dog. And he's very, very empathetic, loves his dog, always talking about him and taking him everywhere, even though he's in a wheelchair. But very happy boy, but not very happy when he was going to school, especially before tutoring. There was definitely a shift and change. Like, I remember summers, he would be like a different child, a happy child. And then when school came, it was like I lost him. Like, my son was gone. This is
even
before
in kindergarten, was this?
Yeah, kindergarten. Kindergarten is when we first started to notice his problem behaviors. And this is what provoked me eventually to request testing for his testing. But yeah, in kindergarten, that whole year was rough. He kept escaping to the bathroom. The school was punishing him, and, he was escaping all the time. And of course, the teachers can't go every minute to get him out of the bathroom, but he was coming home angry and irritable, just frustrated all the time, and just really, he hated school. He would tell me, I don't want to go. And it became an issue too in the first grade too, of him fighting, like, please don't take me to school. I mean, as
did
a
you
mom,
not like to learn? Or did you
it
say
was
things
too
that-
hard. He kept saying to me, I'd be, why, Roan? Why do you not want to go? I thought, are you being bullied? What? He just, he's a 5-year-old, 6-year-old. How can they explain what's going on? All he kept saying to me was, Mom, it's too hard. It's too hard. I can't do it. I can't do it. I hate it. I hate it. Don't make me go to school. And, as a mom, it was heartbreaking at times, really heartbreaking at times, to be honest, to literally feel like you're dragging your child to school when he's like essentially screaming and crying some mornings, don't take me. I mean, don't take me. Don't take me to school. And I'm like, what is so bad about school? What is going on? Not bullied. This is kinder, and then his problem behaviors started getting worse in first grade. They were really bad. He was pushing other children. He was, acting out more at school and home. And this is not Rowan. Like, literally, when school was off in summer, happy child, happy, no behavioral issues, happy child. And then it's like a light switch when school started. Like first grade, like going back to school. It was just for me, I was like, there's got to be something deeper going on. My child is not a bad child, as the school is telling me, that he's this problem child and that he's essentially labeling him as bad. I'm like, there's something that he's trying to escape from. Why does he keep wanting to go to the bathroom all the time and escape? And he was doing a lot of what I call escape behavior. And I saw as a psychologist, he was trying to avoid his environment. And I could see as a psychologist, he was trying to avoid something in the environment was aversive, right? His school environment. And I'm like, well, he's not being bullied. He's a very social kid. He has friends. So that's not an issue. He's very likable. He can play sports. He likes that. But then in first grade, it got worse because they're starting, the material's getting harder. And then he started to see some of his friends starting to read. And, he would just come home and sometimes just be so sad and break my heart and be like, why can they learn to read and I can't? Sorry. Sorry, as a mom, I mean, it's one of the hardest things to hear your child just say, I just want to learn how to read. I just want to learn how to read. And he would tell me that. And I'm like, okay. And the frustrating part is the school tells you, read more to him, read more to him. Are you reading to him? Yes, we're reading to him every day, reading to him every night, reading every book. But I would talk to him. And again, I'm not a child psychologist, so I don't know. Dyslexia is not my area of expertise. But he would just say, I can't. It's too hard. I can't. He'd look at the words. He's like, I can't. It's too hard. And he would get frustrated and literally throw the books down. And I'm like, I'm not a learning disability specialist, but I'm like, there's got to be something going on here. And as a psychologist, I know the importance of what's called neuropsychological testing or testing to help figure out diagnosis. And that could be mental health or even learning disabilities. And I'm like thinking, maybe I don't know, maybe he does have dyslexia or some type of other learning disability. This goes beyond my scope. I don't test children. I don't know. So I just knew his behaviors were telling us something, that there was a reason why he was escaping. And I mean, and there was also this desire to read, but there was, I could see this lapse of he couldn't do what the school was teaching him how to read, or how they were teaching him how to read. It wasn't going anywhere.
Did they have a plan for how to ameliorate his behavior?
No, I mean, at first we got what's called a 504 before an IEP, because he does have some other health issues. Like we found out he has sleep apnea, and then I did call, the school psychologist at his school, and was like, I want you to test my son. And I know most parents wouldn't know to do this, and and I would advocate for them to push the school, because the school won't do it. You have to push for it. You have to advocate for your child. You have to really advocate for your child. And so I was like, I want you to test Roan. And I fought for it. You can get outside neuropsych testing, but it's probably like this in other places too. But there's not enough what's called neuropsychologists that test for learning disabilities. So, I mean, I'm looking at a year wait, in private, to get them private testing. The school can do it sooner. So she agreed, the school psychologist, she agreed to test him. And then I think we got the diagnosis when it was the end of his first grade year. So I caught it early, which I'm very happy about, because earlier intervention is important, because a lot of children, now if I'm doing my own research on this, a lot of children go misdiagnosed. And then by the time they catch them at 4th or 5th grade, they're so behind and they're so depressed too.
What was that meeting like with the school psych?
So well, I called her, and then we had to meet, and there's a whole process of signing all the, the paperwork, logistics, right? Paperwork, you have to sign off that they can do testing. And so the school testing, they make it really clear that it's not considered an official diagnosis like a neuropsych testing, but it's enough to start something. And I knew it would be enough if he did meet criteria for a learning disability, that we could get what's called, an IEP, which is a higher level of care. So the testing came out, and they did say probable dyslexia, and like a mood disorder too, which no shocker given his problem behaviors and everything. So he got IEP, but by the time we had that in place, it was literally the end of the first grade school year. So we really didn't have much time to do any intervention.
How did they define dyslexia? to you? I'm always interested to find out how different districts define that.
To be honest, I'd have to look at his IEP. I mean, they define it by doing, so this is, again, I'll be caveat, not my area of expertise. I mean, they do specific testing with him, to look phonics and other specific testing to diagnosis. And that's beyond my scope. So I literally leave that up to the school psychologist. But then we did get him tested outside too, to get more of what's considered an official diagnosis. I guess the school testing is not considered official per se, but parents don't know this, may not know this, but I actually ended up had to hire an advocate to help me, which is kind of sad to think. I'm a PhD and I could barely navigate the school system. This is not my area of expertise of, an IEP and advocating for services and things like that. So luckily I had a friend who was like, you need to get an advocate. So I got an advocate who worked with just dyslexia, parents of children with dyslexia in the school district. And she helped me a lot. She helped me learn to request that the school can actually pay, the school districts will actually pay for what's called an IEE, which is an independent outside evaluation. So I requested that and they did it outside. I got Roan an outside neuropsychologist evaluation, a full testing. This is much more intensive than school. I mean, she goes really deep to make sure that there's not other learning disabilities going on. Like, we did find also he has a speech learning, he does have a speech deficit too. So that we figured out too with this outside testing. But the neuropsychologist obviously does intensive testing over like several days, hours on end, where, she did with the testing, confirm that Roan does have dyslexia. She also thought he had a mood disorder, likely secondary to his dyslexia, which makes sense. And then in her report talked about, she thought that a lot of the problem behaviors that were going on in school, that we needed to come up with like a behavioral support plan in school, because a lot of it, which I knew too, but the school needs to hear it from her, not me, that a lot of Rowan's problem behaviors escaping was due to, likely his dyslexia and wanting to avoid the environment, and that she recommended that the school needed to provide a better, behavioral support plan for Rowan in school so that he doesn't want to avoid class.
And so then were things put in place to get extra help
at school? Yeah, it was sad to me to realize, not being a school psychologist and not being a child psychologist, this was all new to me, of what little services they can provide. And this, from my research now, is not just where I live problem. This is a nationwide problem of often schools not having evidence-based reading programs for dyslexia, which blew my mind, because here I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm like, what? Like, we have evidence-based treatments for PTSD, for depression, for anxiety that I'm trained in. You're telling me my son has dyslexia. He now meets criteria for an IEP, which is a disability. And there's not a reading program that you have that's specific for dyslexia. They say they do, but then I was doing my research and it wasn't anything evidence-based like what you do, Lindamood-Bell. It wasn't. I'm like, and they wanted to give him a course like 15 minutes a day. And you're sitting there, as a parent in an IEP meeting, and it's almost like this, I'm like, let's say I had out of body experience. I'm like, wow, like my kid is not even on second grade level. He can't even read a word. And you really don't have anything to offer him. And, I say this, it's not just our school. This is a problem. And I'm sure you see this too, and why people come to you, right? This sounds like a nationwide problem, which to me as a psychologist just opened my eyes of like, this is sad. Like, we are not going to be able to get him to read through the school. 15 minutes a day is not going to be enough. And it's not 15, and it's not anything evidence-based. I'm like, here you go. Here you have a child in second grade that's getting more and more angry, more and more frustrated that he can't read because it's getting the materials harder. Of course, they don't hold back, so they push your child through. He's in second grade. His peers are starting to read or reading, he's getting frustrated, more and more frustrated by the day. And also being very, for me as a psychologist and his mom, I'm worried about his mental health because he's coming home like, I'm stupid. What's wrong with me? And you know, how do you explain dyslexia to a 7-year-old? That was hard for me too, to even me, because I'm not a child psychologist. I'm like, well, honey, you are not stupid. You have something called dyslexia, and you need to learn how to read differently than your classmates, but you're not stupid. There's nothing wrong with you, right? And so there was a lot of trying to help him realize that, you know, there's nothing wrong with him, you know, but he, of course, like most children, if you can't read and you see your peers reading, it would be only make sense to come home, you know, to think something's wrong with you. What's wrong with me? Why can't I read just like my friends? Why can't I? I mean, so there was a lot, I was very worried as a mom and a psychologist about his mental health. I felt like he was getting depressed.
How did you get from the school issues to Lindamood-Bell? How did you?
My advocate, actually. My advocate is a big promoter of you guys. She's doing a lot, like, for dyslexia. Her son has dyslexia, I guess, and she went through this years ago with her son, and I guess getting services, and just saw kind of like the experience I went through as a mother. And now that's all she does. Literally, she is just an advocate for parents for dyslexia, because there's hardly any services. So I got connected to her. Luckily, I'm in the business, so I was able to reach out to other child psychologists I know. We're like, hey, what should I do? And you know, here I'm trying to learn, because I'm like I said, I have a PhD, and I had like a horrible time navigating the school system. I'm thinking, geez, how do people aren't educated, or what? They would have no way how to navigate. I need to hire an advocate to help me. And granted, she was very helpful, because then she started to come to Roan's IEP meetings, because in the beginning, these IEP meetings, I mean, you don't want it to be a fight, but it's pretty exhausting to be in there advocating for your child. I was advocating for a lot for his problem behaviors. I did not want him, the school was using punishment. And as a psychologist, I know punishment doesn't work, and it was making his mood worse, especially if they were taking away his recess or music, because he's acting out because he's frustrated. The punishment was making him even more frustrated. So as a psychologist and his mom, I was in there in the IEP meetings advocating a lot for, no, we need to do more positive reinforcement. We need to do a behavioral plan. We need to change this. And granted, most parents wouldn't know this, but I was like, you know, I had got that built into the IEP, you know, and at one point we actually had a behavior analyst come out. I requested that, who actually observed a lot of Roan's behavior. And the school did do that. I'll give them credit on that. They made a better behavioral plan for Roan to kind of help with some of these escape behaviors. Once he started to read, now that he's reading, all his problem behaviors are gone. He no longer escapes to the bathroom now. I mean, now we'll talk about that too after tutoring. All these behaviors we saw before we started tutoring, they're all gone now. I mean, that'll make me emotional too. He doesn't fight me now to go to school. He wants to go to school. He still doesn't like school so much, but like, because he likes to be outside and play, because he's a boy, but he doesn't hate it. He's not crying, and he actually has friends, and he's actually excited to go to school. But I wouldn't say, like I said, he loves it, but he's not.
He has a normal antipathy for school.
Yeah, exactly. And he's not, and all these behaviors that we're seeing, like, he's no longer escaping to the bathroom. There was times where he was so frustrated, he even pushed kids. And I'm like, this is not my son. He's a sweet boy. All these behaviors are gone now. It's amazing. And it's because he can read. He can read, and he's having confidence now, and he feels better about himself. And he would say that too, if he was here, that he's like, yeah, I've asked him. I was like, how does it feel now to go to school and be able to read? And he'll just say, I just feel so much better. Like, I just feel so much better. That's his words. Obviously, as a therapist, I've helped him with this. You know, he's no longer calling himself stupid, no longer calling himself these names. And I think, though, he's starting to, like, I don't want to say embrace his dyslexia, but not see it as there's something wrong with him because he has dyslexia, that he has it. But now he's learning. Before, it was like, I'm stupid. What's wrong with me? I have dyslexia. I'm never going to be able to read. Now he's able to kind of change that mindset of like, I have dyslexia. It might be more difficult for me to learn to read, but I can, but that doesn't make me stupid.
So what was the experience with Lindamood-Bell like? You did it all online, right? You never set
Yeah,
foot.
to be honest, there's really very limited tutoring here in general. And I looked around and I couldn't find very much specific dyslexia, specific tutoring. Granted, there's no site here, so I was a little worried about, doing the online with Roan, because I'm thinking, geez, is he going to be able to pay attention for 2 hours? So the experience was great. I mean, like you guys, it was October 2023, I think, when Roan initially got tested, with Lindamood-Bell, and that's where, testing showed out. He's literally coming out reading on a pre-K level. I remember when he started, like I said, he couldn't read a word. And so we requested that Roan do tutoring every morning from 8 to 10 and then go to school late because he's 7. And I knew as his mom and a psychologist that if we made him go to school and then do tutoring at the end of the day, he's going to be too tired. And I didn't want it to make it a frustrating, another bad experience for him. We had a year of him being on an IEP with the school, and he had made 0 improvement. So whatever they were doing in their reading program, which wasn't evidence-based, he made 0 progress. 0. He even backtracked, some of the data shows. So we told them pretty much, like, we're gonna put him in tutoring because we feel like we have no other option because you guys can't provide this what he needs at an intensive level. So we're going to put him in tutoring, and we, school kind of fought back on this, but we fought for it, my advocate too, that we're going to do it every day at 8 to 10 in the morning because that's when he's the most fresh, and he's not frustrated. So, yeah, I mean, that part went well. Actually, I was a little worried about the online, but, I sent you some videos. He has an emotional support dog named Sammy, and often Rowan would sit here, like kind of where I'm at, and tutor, and his dog would like sit next to him, and his dog would just, I feel like his dog learned to read too throughout all this.
You say you should probably get Sammy tested at this point.
Yeah, I know. Sammy sat here very loyal a lot of times with Rowan right next to him, looking at the testing. And, it was, as me, often I would sit here with him, in the other room, listening to him doing work. But to see the growth, throughout it was pretty amazing because I remember when them testing him, and even when he started, it was just like the phonics, just the basics, he didn't even have that, but just, I could hear him, the repetitive. And then it was like, I could see the excitement in him when he started, things seemed to start clicking. Like when he first started to read a word, I was just like, oh my God, he started to read a few words. He couldn't do that. And then just the growth just kept continuing. And, I would say Rowan, he never disliked tutoring, because I know I will give you props that you play games, and I could hear him playing like Battleship and like other games while he was tutoring, which was good because that kept his interest, right? And so I think if he started to get frustrated or tired, I could tell that probably the instructors knew and they let him have like a break. And so he would say sometimes like, I like the games we play. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, I like learning, but I like the games more. I'm like, okay, well, we can't do games the whole time, but he liked going to tutoring because there was a mix of learning and then the games.
How did it compare to when you were sitting down with the school psychologist?
Well, I mean, your testing is not obviously your testing is not as extensive as this testing probably as the school psychologist, the neuropsych testing, because the neuropsych testing is looking for various types of learning disabilities and stuff. So that's much more intensive. But I think your testing, though, is good to give a baseline of like looking especially at his reading, which was what we needed to target to show that Rowan's reading level was so like, pre-K kinder level, which I could have told you that without the testing because he couldn't read a word. But it was nice that everything was sent to us in the mail, right? And then Rowan did the testing, which I was a little worried if that would keep focus, but he did all the testing through the, online, through the computer. And then he did all his testing after the fact, on the computer too. And so that all went smoothly. And
the post-testing was not too long ago. How long did he go through instructions?
Only started in October, and then he ended, what are we in March now? So he ended in February. So So 4 months. So, I mean, we did about 4 months of really intensive tutoring, 2 hours a day to go from not reading a word to now being able to read sentences, read books, read things. To be honest, I remember there was times when he'd be tutoring and, you can hear him reading to the instructor. I remember the first time I heard him do that. I mean, I literally went in the other room and cried. It was just like, I mean, he couldn't read a word, and then you hear him reading sentences. He didn't see me, of course. I just went in the other room and, bawled because I was like, oh my God, look at him, he's reading. And just to see him be so proud of himself, like after session 2, I would give him a big hug. I'd be like, Roan, you did so awesome. And he would just smile. And you could just see, the proudness and just his self-esteem throughout the whole process just increasing. I can read. I can read. I can read, like now he'll say, I can read like my friends now. And I'll ask him, is school easier now? He goes, oh yes. He's like, school is a lot easier. When we're reading books, like before, I would read to him. Now sometimes he will grab the book and he'll read to me, which is, really amazing. As a mom, I will say this, not as a psychologist, but as a mom, for a while there, I felt like I was losing my child. He was so frustrated. He was so angry. He was just so not happy. And I felt like in all that, it was so hard as a mom to watch your child suffer. And then now, I mean, the tutoring helps so much. It's like having your child back again. I do know, being a psychologist and clinical psychologist, you want to provide treatments that work. You want to provide what's called evidence-based treatments that work. We have clear data, to be honest, as psychologists, I'm like, the data is clear. We have clear data that Roan was an IEP program and he was flatlined. He was not making any improvements with what they were doing. And then once we put him in tutoring in October, then we had this steep learning curve, right? So the data is pretty clear that it was your tutoring, Lindamood-Bell, that made that improvement. It's been an emotional journey.
Yeah.
Very much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, take care. And thank you for listening. You can reach us at our website, lindamood-bell.com, or call us at 800-233-1819. You can also follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and X. We are Lindamood-Bell.